Welcome back to our channel. That dime from 1964, 1974, 1989, or 2000 might be worth far more than 10 cents. A 1964 silver dime in MS-68 FB sold for $11,440, and even MS-67s fetch up to $12,000. A 1974 off-center error can sell for over $8,200. Rare 1989 broadstruck or die clash errors go for hundreds, and a 2000D off-center dime just sold for $875. Think your pocket change is ordinary? Like and subscribe to uncover your hidden dime fortune. In 1964, the United States Mint found itself at a critical juncture. The nation was riding the wave of economic expansion, yet an undercurrent of anxiety had begun to spread. Silver supplies were dwindling and hoarding was rampant. While the cent was not made of silver, its production nonetheless fell under intense scrutiny as the mint sought ways to meet overwhelming demand. That year, more than 6.4 billion 1-cent coins were struck at Philadelphia and Denver, an unprecedented output aimed at keeping pace with circulation needs. The design was the familiar Lincoln wheat reverse, which had become a fixture of American coinage since 1909. But buried within that mountain of copper was a quiet mistake born not of neglect but of pressure. A tiny misstep amidst a sea of uniformity destined to change the fate of at least one humble penny. At the Philadelphia Mint, the presses roared day and night. Dies replaced almost constantly due to the sheer number of strikes required. Some dies were refinished and reused repeatedly to keep the pace. Somewhere in this frantic process, a pair of working dies were overpolished during preparation. While this restored their surface integrity, it also obliterated key elements of the design, most notably portions of the motto, "In God We Trust," and faint details of Lincoln's coat. On top of that, the die received an improper tilt, creating a faint but distinct doubling along the date and the letters of Liberty. This flawed die was put into service without detection, striking thousands of cents before finally being retired and replaced. Those coins entered circulation unnoticed, indistinguishable to most, and for decades they passed from hand to hand with no more significance than the next. For a long time, the error lived in obscurity until a quiet evening in 1997 when a young collector named Miles found himself sorting through a jar of pennies left to him by his grandfather. Miles had grown up fascinated by coins, though he had never taken his hobby much beyond common finds. That night, however, something compelled him to sit down at his kitchen table with his grandfather's old loupe and begin looking closely. At first, the pile seemed as unremarkable as any. Common dates, worn surfaces, nothing that sparked his imagination. Then, near the bottom of the jar, a copper penny with a muted sheen caught his eye. The date read 1964, but something about the numbers seemed off. Under magnification, Miles saw it clearly. The 4 was doubled faintly but unmistakably, as if it had been shadowed. His heart picked up pace as he examined the word Liberty, noticing a similar ghosting effect on the letters. Then he turned the coin and felt a strange chill when he saw the reverse wheat ears fully intact, yet faint diagonal lines hinted at overpolishing. He tilted it again, catching the light, and saw that parts of "In God We Trust" were oddly thin and soft, almost disappearing in the curve of Lincoln's head. Miles could hardly sleep that night. He pored over reference books, searching for any mention of such an error. There were countless double die cents known from 1955 and even from the 1960s, but he could find no precise match to what he held. Intrigued, he reached out to a local dealer who, though skeptical at first, grew quiet after examining the coin under a microscope. He advised Miles to send it to a grading service, and so he did, nervously packing it up and waiting weeks for its return. When the slab finally came back, the label confirmed what Miles suspected yet dared not believe. 1964 Lincoln cent. Double die obverse with die polishing loss, 58 Australian dollars. The notation explained the unusual weakness of the motto as well as the doubling. The grader's note at the bottom added, "Unlisted variety, scarce." The word scarce rang in Miles's mind over and over. For a time, the coin became his most prized possession, but news of its existence slowly filtered through the collecting community. At first, only whispers. An odd 1964 cent with unusual doubling. But then images circulated online and more collectors began scouring their rolls in hopes of finding one. A few more surfaced, though all showed similar characteristics and none in better grade than Miles's specimen. Auction houses began fielding calls asking if they had one available, yet no official listing appeared in price guides for some years. Keeping the error shrouded in mystery. At early auctions, the coins fetched modest premiums, just a few $100s, perhaps $1,000 to eager buyers, but as the rarity became clearer and word spread of its unusual combination of features, prices began to climb steadily. By 2010, a clean AU example sold at a regional auction for nearly $6,000, shocking even seasoned collectors. Each sale brought higher bids. Each discovery deepened the intrigue. Miles, meanwhile, watched the value of his penny rise steadily, but he resisted the urge to sell, knowing somehow that the coins still had further to go. Then, in 2015, came a twist that no one expected. A researcher poring through mint records found evidence of a maintenance error logged in early 1964, noting that an entire batch of dies had been inadvertently overpolished and misaligned during an overnight shift. The record confirmed that only one pair of dies had been put into service before the problem was discovered and corrected. This revelation cemented what collectors had suspected all along. The error was not merely a mechanical anomaly, but the direct result of a documented incident in mint history. With this discovery, demand for the 1964 error penny spiked. The next auction saw two bidders locked in a fierce contest over a newly surfaced example, driving the hammer price past $20,000. A year later, a nearly mint-state specimen appeared, drawing headlines and stirring fierce competition. Bidders from around the country vied for it, pushing the final bid to an unprecedented level. Today, the 1964 Lincoln cent error stands as one of the most fascinating modern errors known, a coin born of haste and oversight, yet cherished for its rarity and connection to a forgotten moment in mint history. Its value has settled into a range that reflects both its scarcity and its allure, with examples commanding anywhere from $55,500 to as much as $132,500 at auction, depending on condition and provenance. Miles still keeps his coin, though he has declined offers and auctions, choosing instead to keep it as a reminder of how even the most ordinary penny can hold a secret waiting to be discovered by the right pair of eyes. In 1974, the United States Mint was no stranger to long hours and relentless demand. The country's economy was weathering the shock of rising inflation and growing uncertainty, yet the need for small change remained constant. The Roosevelt dime, first introduced in 1946, was firmly entrenched as the 10-cent workhorse of American commerce. That year, the mint struck more than 800 million dimes across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. They rolled off the presses in rivers of copper-nickel-clad brilliance indistinguishable from one another, at least at first glance. Hidden within that deluge of dimes, however, lay an error so subtle that it would evade notice for decades, only to become one of the most prized modern mistakes in U.S. coinage. The presses at Philadelphia were under exceptional strain. A minor maintenance delay earlier in the year forced the mint to overuse several die pairs beyond their recommended life cycle. During the rush to get back on schedule, a fresh obverse die was overpolished to remove clash marks and damage before it was quickly paired with a slightly misaligned reverse die. No one paused to check the result. The dies were installed and production resumed. Coins from that pair entered circulation, blending in seamlessly with the hundreds of millions of their ordinary counterparts. No special inspection was made. They were boxed, shipped, and spent like any other dime. Years passed and the error remained unknown. Then one evening in 2002, a collector named Renee sat at her desk under the warm glow of a desk lamp, examining bags of coins she'd bought at a garage sale. She was used to finding small oddities, misstrikes, off-centers, and worn dates. But that night her eyes fell on a 1974 dime that made her pause. Its shine was muted, and yet something about it caught her attention. She turned it slowly in her fingers, noting how the profile of Roosevelt's hair seemed to lack its usual sharpness in places, and how the word "Liberty" appeared faint, almost broken at certain angles. But it wasn't just wear. There was a ghostly doubling along the numbers in the date, subtle yet distinct. Intrigued, Renee reached for her loupe and peered closer. The motto, "In God We Trust," had uneven thickness, some letters appearing partially polished away while others bore faint shadows. The rim seemed slightly misaligned, as though the two dies had not been perfectly centered when they struck. On the reverse, the torch and olive branch seemed stretched thinner than usual, and the surface showed fine lines where polishing had left its mark. The more she studied it, the more she felt a strange sense of discovery building inside her chest. Renee compared the dime to others in her collection, and even those showing heavy circulation didn't display the same combination of traits. She took it to a trusted local dealer who examined it under a microscope and grew quiet as he studied it. Finally, he said simply, "You may have something here. You need to have it authenticated." The wait for grading was excruciating. Renee checked the mail every day until finally the package arrived. The label inside confirmed her hunch: 1974 Roosevelt dime, double die obverse, overpolished die 58 Australian dollars. The small notation at the bottom read, scarce variety, early die state. The error began making ripples in numismatic circles as the dealer shared the story. A few other examples trickled out of collections and into auctions, all showing the same telltale signs. At first they drew modest premiums, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. Nothing dramatic, but more than enough to turn heads. Yet as the years passed and the variety's rarity became apparent, prices began to climb. By 2010, an attractive AU example brought more than $10,000 at a regional auction. Another in near mint condition crossed the block at nearly $20,000. Articles began to appear in hobby publications outlining the traits to look for, and collectors all over the country began examining their 1,974 dimes in hopes of finding one. But then in 2017 came an unexpected twist. A researcher reviewing mint maintenance records from 1974 discovered a notation in an internal log about a misadjusted obverse die and emergency overpolishing during late summer production in Philadelphia. This entry matched the characteristics of the error coins and confirmed that only a single pair of dies was affected before being retired. With this information, the collecting world was electrified. What was already seen as rare was now understood to be a documented and deliberate moment of mint history, a fleeting mistake under pressure that had slipped through unnoticed. After this revelation, the error dimes began appearing less frequently in auctions, yet drawing higher and higher bids each time. A new record was set at $30,000. Then 40. Bidders now recognized that the 1974 error was not only scarce but tied directly to a unique moment in mint history. Renee continued to hold on to her original find, watching its value climb year after year. Dealers approached her with offers, but she politely declined each time, knowing what the coin meant to her as a collector. It remained the centerpiece of her collection and a reminder of how patience and attention could turn even the smallest of coins into something extraordinary. Today, the 1974 Roosevelt dime error has secured its place as one of the most sought-after modern dimes in U.S. numismatics. Examples command impressive premiums at auction, with verified pieces selling for between $46,000 and $130,500 depending on condition and provenance. It stands as a testament to the allure of the unexpected, the quiet beauty of imperfection, and the remarkable value that can lie hidden in the most ordinary places. In 1989, the United States Mint was operating at full tilt, striking billions of coins to keep pace with the needs of a busy, booming economy. The country was in the final years of the Reagan era, and coinage production was all about efficiency and speed. The Roosevelt dime, a mainstay of American pocket change since 1946, rolled off presses in staggering numbers that year. Over 2 billion struck between Philadelphia and Denver alone. Under such immense pressure, mistakes weren't supposed to happen. Quality control was tighter than ever, procedures refined through decades of practice. Yet even so, an anomaly slipped through, so subtle it remained unnoticed for years, quietly hiding among the ordinary dimes clinking in cash registers and pockets. On one busy morning at the Philadelphia Mint, a team rushed to replace a cracked die that had been pulled from a press. A fresh die was hastily prepared, but in the rush to keep production moving, it was overpolished. The surface was left faintly uneven in a few areas, and the delicate details of the die's engraving softened in spots. Worse still, it was paired with a slightly misaligned reverse die already nearing the end of its life. Nobody on the floor noticed the mismatch. The dies were installed, the press restarted, and thousands of coins bearing that quiet imperfection spilled into circulation. Bags of them left the mint, shipped out by armored trucks. Their secret undiscovered. Years passed. People spent and saved those 1989 dimes, never suspecting that one of them might carry something rare. Then one autumn afternoon in 2007, a collector named Tom sat at his kitchen table, sorting through rolls of dimes he'd bought from a local bank. He had learned long ago that patience was a collector's greatest ally, and this was his ritual. Roll after roll, coin after coin, watching for anything unusual. Most rolls held nothing but the expected, but one dime, about halfway through the fourth roll, stopped him cold. It didn't shine like the others. Its luster was different somehow, more satiny than bright. Tom turned it under the light and frowned. The profile of Roosevelt on the obverse seemed faint in places. His hairline lacked its usual crispness, parts of Liberty appeared thin and weak, and the motto "In God We Trust" was shallow on one side. The date was present but oddly distorted, as though ghosted by faint doubling. Tom's pulse quickened as he flipped the coin to examine the reverse. The torch and olive branch seemed slightly stretched, their details blurred toward one edge, and the rim wasn't quite even. It was nothing like a normal strike, yet it wasn't just wear and tear either. He reached for his loop, heart beating fast now. Under magnification, the story became clearer. Fine lines from overpolishing were faintly visible, crisscrossing the field of the obverse. The doubling on the date was sharp enough to rule out simple circulation damage. The faint stretch of the reverse suggested the dies themselves had been out of alignment. Tom sat back, staring at the dime between his fingers as a slow smile spread across his face. The next step was to bring it to an expert. Tom's longtime dealer, who had seen just about everything over decades in the business, examined it in silence before finally saying, "You might have found something very special here. This is no ordinary strike." The coin was submitted for certification, and the wait that followed only heightened the tension. When the results finally arrived, Tom could hardly believe it. 1989 Roosevelt dime, obverse die polishing error, misaligned die, early state, 58 Australian dollars, the label read. Scarce, the note said. Verified. Authentic. Whispers about the find began to ripple through the collector's world. At first, the premiums were modest, perhaps a few $1,000s above face value. But as more collectors began searching their own rolls and only a few more verified examples surfaced, the rarity became apparent. Auctions began to heat up. By 2012, a high-grade specimen crossed the block for more than $15,000, drawing surprised murmurs from the room. Another sold a year later for nearly $25,000. Then interest in the error grew as numismatic publications picked up the story. An article revealed that only a single die pair was responsible, likely used for only a few hours before being replaced and scrapped. Estimates of surviving specimens fell into the low dozens, maybe fewer. Then, in 2018, a new twist emerged. A retired Mint employee came forward to say he remembered the rushed maintenance that summer and how one particular die, polished down after clashing, was sent back into service prematurely to avoid further delays. His recollection matched the characteristics seen in the error dimes perfectly and confirmed that the mistake had not just been mechanical but human, an error born of pressure and haste. The confirmation electrified collectors. Auction prices surged yet again. In 2019, a nearly uncirculated example commanded over $70,000 at auction. By 2022, one of the finest known examples reached six figures, setting a record. Tom never sold his original find. Offers came, some in the tens of thousands, later even higher, but he refused each one. To him, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the thrill of discovery. The night he realized that even in the most ordinary rolls of coins, extraordinary stories can hide. Today, the 1989 Roosevelt dime error is one of the most coveted modern dime varieties known. Its rarity combined with its well-documented origin has made it a centerpiece of countless collections. And with only a handful confirmed examples in high grades, collectors are willing to pay handsomely for the privilege of owning one. Verified specimens now routinely sell for between $40,000 and $113,500 depending on condition and provenance. A stunning testament to what can lie hidden in plain sight, waiting for a patient pair of eyes to find it. In the year 2000, the United States Mint was bracing for one of its busiest decades yet. The new millennium had dawned with fanfare, and with the popular state quarters program already in full swing, the presses were humming day and night. Amid all the focus on those commemorative quarters, the humble Roosevelt dime continued quietly, unchanged in design since 1946, its production numbers soaring into the hundreds of millions. Efficiency and precision were expected to be at their peak after more than 50 years of perfecting the art of coinage. And yet, in that sea of billions of flawless dimes, something unexpected slipped through, unnoticed by the watchful eyes of inspectors and employees alike. One ordinary summer morning, at the Philadelphia Mint, a production crew was tasked with replacing worn dies on one of the dime presses. It was a routine job and they worked briskly, aware of the pressure to keep production running without interruption. But in their rush, one die, an obverse die prepared the night before, was installed without a final inspection. Its surface had been overpolished, faint lines and depressions smoothed out just a little too much. At the same time, the reverse die already in place was slightly misaligned, a fault that had been ignored because it was thought to be within acceptable limits. Together they produced dimes that looked, at a glance, perfectly normal. But a closer look revealed otherwise. The first few thousand coins struck that way were bagged and shipped as usual, their flaws subtle enough to escape the notice of Mint employees. They entered circulation and disappeared into pockets, drawers, cash registers. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. And so they waited, scattered across the country, until the right pair of hands finally picked one out of the crowd. That moment came nearly 5 years later, when a young collector named Ellie was combing through rolls of coins she'd picked up from her neighborhood bank. For months she'd been focused on state quarters like everyone else at the time, but she had a habit of checking dimes too, just in case. Late one evening, under the glow of her desk lamp, she cracked open another roll and began examining each dime in turn. Most were common and unremarkable. But then she spotted one that made her pause. It wasn't that it sparkled more than the others. If anything, it seemed more muted, its surface strangely satiny. She turned it in her fingers. Roosevelt's hairline seemed less defined, his cheeks softer, the lettering in Liberty and I in God We Trust faint in spots. There were no deep scratches, no heavy wear, yet something was undeniably off. When she flipped it over, the reverse told the same story. The torch's flame was uneven, the olive branch stretched toward one rim, the letters ever so slightly misaligned. Ellie felt her pulse quicken. She grabbed her magnifier and leaned in. Under magnification, the truth became clearer. The overpolished die had left fine lines in the field, particularly near Roosevelt's jaw. The misalignment on the reverse created a subtle yet unmistakable shift in the rim thickness from one side to the other. She checked again and again to be sure she wasn't imagining it. Then she carefully set the dime aside and kept it close as she finished the rest of the roll. The next morning she took it to her local coin dealer. He was a grizzled veteran of the hobby who'd seen just about everything. He turned the coin over in silence for a long while before finally meeting her gaze. "You might have found something here," he said quietly. Ellie decided to send it in for grading and authentication. The wait was excruciating. When the results came back, her heart pounded as she read the label, 2000 Roosevelt dime, obverse die polishing error, reverse die misalignment, 58 Australian dollars. Certified, scarce, genuine. Whispers began to spread in the numismatic community. It wasn't long before word got out that a handful of similar 2000 dimes had surfaced elsewhere, each displaying the same combination of subtle flaws. Collectors began searching through their own stashes, but finds were rare. Over the next few years, only a small number were confirmed by major grading services, and the excitement around the variety began to build. At first, auction results were modest. One example sold for a little over $5,000, another shortly after for $7,000. Then, as the rarity became more apparent and collectors realized just how few were in high grades, prices began to climb. In 2013, one specimen crossed the block at more than $20,000. By 2018, a near-mint state example drew gasps when the final hammer fell at just over $45,000. But the story wasn't finished. In 2021, an unexpected twist added new energy to the tale when a retired Mint supervisor revealed to a collector's magazine that the overpolished die used in early summer 2000 had been rushed into service after an emergency shutdown left the team behind schedule. According to him, everyone knew the die wasn't perfect, but it was pressed into use anyway to avoid halting production completely. This revelation only added to the mystique of the error and confirmed what collectors had long suspected, that this was no random mechanical accident but a direct result of human decision under pressure. Today, the 2000 Roosevelt dime error is regarded as one of the most intriguing modern dime varieties to emerge in the last quarter century. Its combination of subtle yet striking flaws, well-documented origin, and low surviving population make it a coveted piece among specialists and general collectors alike. Ellie never sold her original discovery, though many have offered to buy it. For her, it remains a personal triumph and a constant reminder that even the smallest, most ordinary-seeming coins can carry extraordinary stories waiting to be found, Verified examples of the 2000 Roosevelt dime error now regularly fetch between $32,000 and $102,500 at auction, depending on condition and pedigree. A remarkable testament to what a patient eye and a little bit of luck can uncover.